Well folks, we've waited, we've been unsure about it, but the time has finally come. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is out on PlayStation 5, and I've completed the game. I've played through into the end game, and today I'm breaking down our big PlayStation 5 review, so let's get into it. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League isn't quite what anyone expected to follow up the revered Arkham trilogy. In fact, it's steadily become a controversial game, as terms like endgame and post-launch content have understandably riled up the fanbase. From Arcane's disastrous Redfall to the now canned Naughty Dog Factions multiplayer, we've seen many single-player developers fall for the seductive appeal of live service games. But has Rocksteady really sold its soul? Or has it actually managed to strike that fine balance? What is clear is that the studio has gambled big on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and the payoff has been worth it. Mostly. So what exactly is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? Well, first and foremost, it's another expansive story experience set within the Arkhamverse. 5 years after the Dark Knight hung up his kill, Task Force X is sent into Metropolis, a city occupied by the alien Brainiac, with a mission to take out the now brainwashed Justice League. It is one hell of a concept, and I utterly lapped it up across the roughly 12-hour campaign. In many ways, this is another traditional Rocksteady experience with industry-leading cinematics and facial animations, plenty of twists and turns, and some goosebump-inducing moments with its iconic roster of superheroes turned villains. Then there's the other side of the coin. Suicide Squad is a cooperative shooter where up to 4 players assume the roles of Harley Quinn, Deadshot, King Shark, and Captain Boomerang. While some missions are more traditionally linear, most are objective based as Task Force X captures, defends, and escorts while defeating waves of enemies. Upon the completion of missions, players are met with an end screen, granted some looty rewards, and sent back out into the open world. The whole thing can be played in either co-op or solo, although at the time of this review, it still requires an online connection regardless of which you choose. How well you think that hybrid blend of single player and multiplayer works is really down to perspective. As a single player game, Suicide Squad has some wacky pacing, as you're left to pick off enemies again and again in between some brilliant story content. But as a multiplayer offering, it's got a far better story than you'd find in the likes of Destiny 2 or The Division. Either way, we have something that is good, verging on great, but never quite hits the highs we'd expect from Rocksteady since it isn't willing to fully commit to one or the other. But let's start with that story. Tone is the biggest change between this and our last Arkham outing, with the bickering Task Force X acting as the heart of this tale. This is a team vastly underqualified to take on the might of the invading Brainiac and his Justice League pets, and in part it's what makes this comedic take so endearing. This is a far funnier game than I ever expected it to be, and I caught myself genuinely laughing throughout its story thanks to the witty back and forth between the core squad. Every member of the squad also has their own personal vendetta against each of the Justice League, and the continual toe-stepping makes their quest for revenge all the more entertaining. It's not going to be for everyone, but for the most part I felt that it managed to toe the line between consistent laughs that never truly overshadow the more serious moments. Of course though, part of the narrative will be spoiled by the title itself, and it's here that feathers may be ruffled. Rocksteady manages to expertly build upon each of its iconic League members, brilliantly showcasing just how big a threat they are under Brainiac's allure. The game's introduction to Batman, featuring a devilish performance from the late Kevin Conroy, is genuinely fear-inducing, and the earth-shuddering thud of Superman taking flight impresses every single time. I have to take a moment to mention Wonder Woman 2, who's portrayed far better here than anything the ill-fated DCEU conjured up. Pacing, however, kills so much of the goodwill that Suicide Squad builds up with its often excellent writing and character portrayals. Not only are campaign missions set apart by a tedious stop and start of 5-minute objectives, once you actually get to the point of the game, it doesn't really want you reveling in the moment. Now, I'm not going to spoil things here as much as I can avoid with a game called Kill the Justice League, but after some excellent build-up, it would have been nice to take a beat and process what had just transpired. Instead, Rocksteady wants you just to move on to the next shooting gallery as soon as possible. Speaking of shooting though, you are gonna be doing a lot of it. Regardless of whether you're playing as Harley Quinn or King Shark, each member will be kitted out with SMGs, pistols, shotguns, assault rifles, snipers, and even miniguns. It is an odd fit for the Arkham devs, especially after cooking up a combat system that still holds influence to this day, but I was pleasantly surprised to to find that gunplay feels snappy, responsive, and super satisfying. It's helped by the genuinely incredible haptic support, which is Sony first party level, and that carries on outside of the combat itself. Now, while guns may not be enough to make Suicide Squad's gameplay stick out, its traversal will. Each of the 4 members of the squad have their own way of getting around Metropolis. Harley uses Batman's Bat's drone and grapple to swing around, Deadshot his jetpack, King Shark his godly jumping abilities, and Boomerang his Speed Force gauntlet. Each fundamentally works the same, but they all have a distinct feel to them that ties into the combat. In the early hours, honestly, I wasn't too sure about the traversal. I had my favourites. Boomerang was immediately the one that stuck out to me, but the likes of Harley Quinn and King Shark felt kinda dull by comparison. However, as I delved a little deeper into the campaign and steadily came to grips with the various traversal styles, the true fun of Suicide Squad's gameplay unearthed itself. While missions are initially short, they do gradually lengthen, and bumping the difficulty up to the highest tier means you really have to knuckle down at times. Keeping your character in the air, moving around, countering shots, and melee attacking enemies to gain back your shield becomes a delight, and I genuinely couldn't get enough of the combat in the latter hours of the game. It's helped even more by the rock solid performance on PlayStation 5. I mean, genuinely, in around 15 hours of gameplay, I only had one dip in frame rate. In a testament to how fun each character is to play, my playtime is pretty equal across all 4 anti-heroes. However, if you do want to stick with just one member of the squad, you can easily do that. Thanks to the guns, grenades, melee weapons, and mods, you can mold any of the characters to your preferred playstyle, and Suicide Squad has a pretty in-depth customization process via skill trees and weapon rolls. The Hall of Justice acts as the game's operating base, and it's here that NPCs such as Poison Ivy and Penguin can amplify and modify your builds. Admittedly, it was all a little numbers heavy for me, and once I found a higher tier weapon and gear, I typically just stuck with that. Credit where credit's due though, it's nice that you can just let the stats fall by the wayside if you want to, but it does mean that outside of growing familiar with traversal, nothing in the upgrade process really changes your playstyle. It's all there if you really want to dig into it, but for me the system fell a little flat. So what about all this live service stuff we keep hearing about then? Well, outside of mission types that you would find in a shooter like The Division, there isn't really anything too intrusive throughout the base campaign. Playing the game solo would make the end screen leaderboard stuff really annoying, and it does impact pacing, but when playing with a friend, it undeniably sparked that competitive edge in me. Placing top of the leaderboard means you become the squad leader, and you get to pick the next mission. Especially as I creeped into the later missions, the threat of losing out in the top spot goaded me into pulling off flashier moves and dealing more damaging combos. It's really just there for bragging rights, but it's a nice way to incentivize competition with your friends, and Suicide Squad makes it super easy to engage with. Matching up with other online players is also a breeze, and thankfully when playing in a friend's world, yours will update seamlessly alongside it, so there's no need to replay the campaign or side content in your version of Metropolis. There's also a neat feature called Social Squad where if playing with AI, you can fill the bot player with your friend's character profiles, featuring their weapons, gear, and cosmetics. When that friend logs back in, they'll receive a small portion of the resources you gained from playing. Now, there are a number of nice little quality of life features like this that many similar games simply wouldn't launch with. All of this friendly competition and cooperative play becomes increasingly prevalent as you move into the endgame content. So far, the incursion missions, which follow the final boss, are a little underwhelming. You effectively play a variant of an objective at higher and higher mastery levels, with the aim of unlocking villain-centric weapon sets. The co-op aspect of the gameplay here never feels especially important, as you're effectively shooting at the same group of enemies rather than working together to take them down. Enemy variety, while visually bland, does keep things fresh gameplay wise, but I just wish there was a bit more of a satisfying leveling system, or maybe even better rewards, and because of that, I'm not really sure this has the legs to be played for weeks and months. However, Rocksteady is keen to emphasise that the first season of content is on its way, with new Elseworld inspired areas, a new playable character, and of course new story stuff, mission types, and weapons. 3 following seasons are teased upon the completion of the campaign, with the scope for what I would estimate to be 6 full seasons. It is refreshing that Rocksteady seemingly has an endpoint in store for its post-launch plans, but the jury is still out on whether this will be enough to actually keep its players engaged. What is a relief though is that all of this post-launch content is free. The only paid DLC in Kill the Justice League is cosmetic, purchased either through the store or a battle pass, which launches with Season 1. And there are actually a fair amount of cosmetics that you can unlock just in the base game via things like Riddler challenges and riddles, which make a welcome return from the Arkham games. When put next to other live service games, Suicide Squad is a pretty generous offering that hits the ground with a light jog rather than a full-on sprint. So, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is a complicated game. It's tough not to think about what could have been if Rocksteady opted for another traditional single-player title, especially since the split personalities at this game's heart stop it from reaching the heights of the developer's previous works. That said, despite all of my complaints, I can't deny that the game is just fun. The story lacks a payoff but remains engaging throughout, the traversal-tinged combat is genuinely fantastic, it's a blast to play with friends, it's one of the best looking games on PlayStation 5, it runs like an absolute dream, and as far as live service games go, it's shaping up to be a meaty and generous offering. True, there is a bittersweet feeling surrounding this game, and that sentiment will remain for a lot of players, but it's hard to say that Rocksteady entirely missed the mark with this big gamble. So there is our Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League review. Let me know what you're thinking of this game down in the comments below. I have to say, I think there is a lot of unnecessary negativity towards it, but you know, it is what it is. So thank you for watching the video. Remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more PlayStation video content, and until next time, I've been Aaron and this has been Push Square.